Welcome to the Minds of E-commerce podcast, where you'll learn one key strategy that made leading e-commerce companies grow exponentially. We cut the bullshit and keep the meat. In a 15-minute episode, founders and executives take us through a deep dive of a strategy so you get to learn and grow your online sales. In the last episode, you heard from Abby Walker of Vivian Liu, who shared how she works with agencies and runs $1 million e-commerce store with no employees. Today, on episode 11, get ready. Adam Trouncer, CEO of Athletic Greens, shares how he doubled the 8-figure business over the last couple of years, how they created a world-class brand and product experience to increase retention and lifetime value, and how they changed their marketing to expand their audience. Trust me, you do not want to miss this episode. This is Minds of E-commerce. All right, Adam, welcome to the show. So, as you know, this podcast, Minds of E-commerce, is all about going deep and really understanding one key growth strategy that really helped move your business forward, right? So you're CEO of Athletic Greens, and you were telling me that you more than doubled the business, right? This is an 8-figure e-commerce, direct-to-consumer e-commerce business, and you've doubled it in how long? What, the past year or so?
Yeah, past couple of years. So we've obviously been on the journey for a long time now, but we're continuing to have really strong growth, which is great. So it's been an exciting ride.
That's amazing. And while we were talking before the podcast, you said that really building a brand experience, fostering true client relationships, and focusing on how the clients and customers interact with the product is one of the key reasons why you were able to grow so much. So tell us a bit more about that.
For sure. Yeah, I think one of the major reasons for our growth, and it's all sort of blended in, I think it comes down to really, are we adding a huge amount of value to our customers and building a strong relationship with them? That's how I think about it. So for me, that comes from the product, is it delivering on the promise that you've made in your marketing? And then subsequently on any interaction or touch points you have with them, whether it be pre-purchase or post, are you continuing to foster and build that relationship in a way that really serves them and makes them feel connected to you as a brand?
Totally.
So I think, I'm very fortunate to be running a business where we've invested a lot in our product IP. And so we do have a differentiated product in a space that typically there's a lot of commodity-based products. And so a big part of our success is continuing to invest in the product, continuing to innovate on that, to make sure that we're giving way more value to customers than they could get anywhere else. And that's what's really helped build the brand. Can dive into some details on that. But yeah, that's something that's been a big driver for us.
That's awesome. Well, I'd love to know, let's say we look at what you've been doing on Athletic Greens. What are some concrete examples of how you've been able to do that?
For sure. So I think the interesting thing about Athletic Greens and why I love it as sort of as a marketer or as a business person is that we've actually, the product itself, we haven't put a business model and blended a business model, to what we want. It's actually all derived from the product itself. So, for example, the product is a daily consumable, and so it's messaged that way. And so as such, as a customer experience, we have subscription and we have people buying on a recurring basis. So we're very incentivized in the entire kind of customer journey to make sure that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot by overselling, by doing things to have sort of churn and burn customers, but instead setting up the relationship from day one, which means that the lifetime value will be really, really high. So for example, the team is always thinking around how do we make sure we continue to not just message the product right pre-purchase, but also what else are we doing through that lifetime of the customer to increase that trust, increase that brand, that brand relationship that we have, or customer relationship we have, and to increase retention. So a perfect example is we've just launched a new unboxing experience. That whole experience, you get a jar with your order, you get a shake. But all of those insights came from customers, from problems that we saw. And the reason why we did that was simply because we're trying to build a habit with them on a daily basis to take the product. And we saw that this is another way in which, yes, we're adding value to them. They get a nice jar, they get a shaker, but it also improves the user experience of the product and helps them, with the repeat purchases. So that's just one example, but we really think around the entire life cycle of the customer, not just, the front end acquisition, what we're doing there.
Totally. Lifetime value being probably one of your most important metric. So I'm guessing now you have this crazy unboxing experience, and I've seen photos from friends who received it. Now, what would you say to companies that are considering a similar unboxing experience, but they're looking at the upfront cost of doing that, and they're like, we just can't be doing that. Like, I'm sure we can do something that's half as good that will have the same impact. How do you take people through that?
Yeah, it's really hard. And I think the question you're answering is sort of what's the balance between sort of direct, performance marketing versus brand marketing, and where do you sit on that spectrum? So, the beauty about e-commerce businesses is that you know exactly where every dollar goes and you can measure the return of that impact. The tricky thing with kind of brand or things like that is that it's harder to really associate where that spend goes. So look, we still look at that and go, well, we can measure that. So we did a split test first to say, we give it to 100 users. What was their NPS scores? What was their reaction to the unboxing experience before we rolled it out to our entire customer base? So with some pre-metrics we could get to say, is this going to roughly work? Do we think it's going to have an impact on retention? But at the end of the day, we just had to pull the trigger to say, look, we're going to make this investment because it's going to improve our relationship with our existing and future customers. And we think it is going to have a real impact on lifetime value. So I'd still look at it from a data numbers perspective, but then I'd put my hat on and go, if I'm a customer and I receive this, am I going to be 20% or 30% more likely to reorder again? Yeah, I think so. And you just got to go.
Totally. Sometimes. That's awesome. And how do you, try to measure those reactions that you have from customers? Do you do surveys or customer interviews? What's your go-to?
Yeah, totally. So there's a lot we've done in the past, and there's a lot we continue to do. And I think those feedback loops and processes are critical for e-commerce businesses. So for us, we have sort of set NPS scores that get triggered at a certain point in time. So because our product is one where you don't actually feel a tangible benefit until you use it for a couple of weeks, we trigger those NPSs after 30 or 60 days rather than on day one. Because unlike shoes that you get, you like them or you don't, they fit or they don't, you recommend it at that point in time. So, NPS, we look at, churn, by cohort or by different areas. So, where are we getting our best customers from? Reasons for cancellation. We have on-site chat. We have all of those other kind of contact points as well as our customer happiness team. So we're constantly sharing feedback internally around what are customers saying, what are they asking for, why are they leaving us, or what can we do to add more value to them? And so that really, building that into the fabric of the business and the processes, I think is critical. And so on company calls, we'll talk around what's some positive feedback, what's some also negative feedback we've had from customers. So, I think it's just part of sort of how you build the culture of the organization and the processes as you scale.
That's so interesting and so important. Now, you gave us a great example. So the unboxing experience, and it really leaves people with a great emotional experience, right? When they're like, wow, like this brand is not half-assing it. Like this is, they're for real. So now what are some other, maybe do you have an example that's completely different in terms of how you foster that brand with customers?
Totally. I think the question for me around brand is, what are the touch points you've got or that's available to you, and how do you add more value to their lives in any way? And so maybe a couple of different separate examples. One example is, we kind of rebranded quite heavily over the last year or two as well, which I think has had an impact on our growth as well. Because we realized that although, we had a great product that was serving a customer demographic, but there was a much bigger demographic that we weren't hitting because of how the product was actually positioned from a design, from a look and feel, from a logo perspective as well. So I think, you get to create what brand you want to build. I think that's the most exciting thing. So being really intentional, really intentional about that, I think is super critical. And if you see something, and so, we saw, when Chris started the business, we saw that, maybe athletes would be the only ones interested in this product.
Right.
Very different to our customer base that we saw started buying it and buying it today. Yes, we still have athletes, but we have 70-year-old, females, we have 20-year-old males, we have people from all different walks of life. And so decided to open up the brand more to make it more inclusive of everyone else. So I think making sure that you're intentional about the brand that you want to build and who you want to serve and add value to, I think is critical. And another example of sort of what we've done recently. So we really changed the whole fabric of what the brand looks like and why for that reason, so that we could open up a bigger market as well. And then separate to that, anything from, any touch point you have with customers, I think is a way that you can add value. So whether that's putting a handwritten note in a box to say, hey, thanks for joining, for being part of the community, that's having a Facebook group where people can ask questions and kind of gather feedback. Or, we have a podcast, we have content as well that we send out. Just any way that we feel that we can deepen our relationship with customers and add value to them, we'll kind of do it, because it'll build the brand.
Got it. And would you say, now I'm thinking, let's say I'd run a $5 to $10 million e-commerce brand, and I'm realizing that maybe so far, we've been doing well, but, we've been mostly getting by just selling the product, and the customer experience is a bit lacking. At what point, what triggers, what would trigger a business to decide, hey, now's the time to do it, and, it's not too late for that? Are there times where you're like, that's the moment for it?
It's a tricky question to say. I don't think there's ever a right moment for anything in life, so I'm cautious to say anything. Yeah, there are capital constraints. You got to bootstrap your way through, and there's nothing perfect. I think it really comes down to, what are you trying to achieve, or what's your purpose as a business? You know what I mean? Is it just to optimize for profitability? Is it to make sure that your business is around in 20 years, 30 years, or are you looking for a quick sale as well? You know what I mean? Or do you have kind of more of a bigger purpose like we do, which is more attached to, we want to help inspire people to live healthier lives, and the more over time that we can do to build relationships and spread the word and grow the brand, then we'll kind of do it. So I think that's a really hard question to answer, and there's no right one. What I would say is this, though, is that if you are looking to build an online, I think, business, the beauty about the world today is you can have a direct access to customers and build a direct relationship with them. And whether that's you create your own products or you sell products that other people make, you can build that relationship any way you want, and you can determine, how much value you provide on it on either ways of there. So I think it's more around, what are you optimizing for as a business, and what's your purpose? And then from that, each of these decisions kind of become a little bit easier.
Right. That's good. And I love what you said about, for you, one of those moments was when you started realizing that you had more than just athletes as customers, right? And now all those different touch points are customized and have messaging that will be meant for all your segments. What are some ways that you customize your marketing or messaging for each of these segments? Because the name is Athletic Greens, and I know it's been a challenge for you guys to really see how to put it out there. So explain how you've been able to push through it and really find the solution.
For sure. And it's a very tricky thing to do, because as you expand segments, you don't want to dilute the core. So it's not an easy challenge, because you want to still honor those that have got you to this point, yet make it inclusive in that way. So one thing to maybe note for your listeners is the reason why it's extra challenging for us as a business is because we have one product, and really anyone could take this product and get value from it. And so, we need to speak to different people depending on your lifestyle, your diet, get different benefits from the product as well. So it's sort of like one SKU, but in actual fact, it's like multiple SKUs, and it's got multiple audiences that you're really doing. And that's one of the lucky things about our business model, is that we've got one or two SKUs, and that's about it.
Right.
So to answer your question, the way that I've been thinking about it is, you can personalize the message, and you can personalize the message of the product to different audiences easy, whether that's targeting specific channels, different audiences on podcasts or on Facebook, or on native or wherever you want, and tailoring the landing pages and obviously your site in order to better message their need state or their problem, and your product is a solution. So that's what we do. We try to segment and message who we're talking to and the benefits they'll get on the front end. Subsequently then still create an open brand, though, so the look and the feel of the bag that is inclusive, that brings everyone in. And so some simple things that we did to try to deliteralized the word athletic and greens is we added a product name, which is Ultimate Daily, which sounds more like a functional product name.
Right.
And we created a tagline for the product, which is, our most complete supplement for a better you. So for a better you really dictates to us what athletic is. It's like anyone who sweats. Whereas greens is, our interpretation of that is the most complete supplement. So, but I figure Pottery Barn was able to do it. They don't just sell pots in barns, so we should be able to do it too. So yeah, that's how I think about it. Is you can still message things that the benefits and the customer experience. You can tailor your entire site, your entire email flow to specific segments. It gets very hard. So unless you're a huge company, it's pretty much impossible. But that's sort of the way I think about it.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Now, are there methods or things that you've done to find out how to communicate to each of these segments, right? Because we could be guessing about our customers, but at the end of the day, those are going to be guesses. So what are strategies that you've utilized to really know what messaging to use for each of these target audiences?
Sure. That's a good question. So from our side, I think it's first is understanding your customers. So, over the years we've done, we did more than 150 direct customer interviews in terms of how they talk about the product, what they do, looking through testimonials to pull out words in terms of how they talk around the benefits or how they articulate things. And internally now we have, we had from the start, but we've continued to build on kind of 4 or 5 key customer avatars that we have. So there's a Bill and an Allison, and we have real personas attached to them. And so they continually to get updated, as we grow and as we learn more and more about our different user bases. So it's, as a marketing team, you can't have 50 different avatars that you kind of target because it becomes impossible.
Totally.
So to have, 3 to 5 maybe that we're focused on, or is what we do to try to make sure that whenever we're creating some marketing collateral, that we're always talking to the right audience in the right way, using their language.
So constant surveying and talking with customers, looking at problem guessing, Facebook comments and what people are saying online and support chats and all of that. And once you aggregate that, you get a pretty good a pretty good persona.
Exactly.
Which helps you build the value proposition.
Exactly. And then your value proposition, then your addressable market increases as well. So I think that's the interesting thing is we're always on the lookout for what other audiences would use our product. Like, so we have a product now, I think they should use it in space because where else can you get nutrition in one scoop? You know what I mean? So and that's not like those customers haven't, NASA haven't come knocking on the door yet, but maybe that's something that we want to actively then go after because we go, well, we think we're actually adding value to someone, in space or whatever, or other demographics in that way. So I think being constantly looking for opportunities as to, we know we're solving a specific problem, and that problem for us is how do you get complete nutrition on a daily basis? And so who in this massive wide world has that problem? And what segments aren't we talking to right now, or that we could expand into in that way? So not just in the US, but geographically. So, whether that be in Europe or Asia or otherwhere, there's lots of opportunities to make sure people need to get the right nutrition if you're in a remote environment or different things.
For sure. Now, I've been talking with a lot of e-commerce executives, CEOs, founders, and some of them have told me that they were wondering at times if they should create a separate brand for some of their target audience instead of keeping it under one umbrella. Is that something you've ever considered? And, if not, when would you think, would you say are the right times to create a separate brand for different audience segment?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, we have, we thought at one stage, do we leave Athletic Greens and create a new separate brand or something for, something else? To me, that comes down to a brand is really, to me, it's really an organization. Like, what's the purpose of the brand and then the company that you've got, and then what are you trying to achieve and who are you trying to talk to and add value to? So for us, we made the decision that, Athletic Greens is just a name, you know what I mean? And the brand is much more than that, and we can continue to build it in that way. I think, so there's no easy answer is what I'm sort of saying. I think it really depends on what's the purpose that you're trying to achieve and what is that relationship that you're trying to foster with that audience. So for us, it's the same whether you're an athlete, a 70-year-old or a 20-year-old. You're still trying to make sure that you feel great, you live a fulfilling life, and you're happy. And nutrition is a key pillar in that. So,
Right.
So the purpose behind why they're taking the product and why they're connecting with the brand is all the same. And so, so for me, it comes down to, is the vision of the business aligned with the brand and or is the brand aligned with the vision of the business? Or if there's something separate. Now, if we had a sugary drink, as an example, that is completely opposite to the purpose, and it's all about fun and happiness and enjoying the other things in life, I'd say, well, that's not congruent with our purpose as a business and brand. So I better go create a different brand for that one.
Yeah, makes sense. That's a great answer. So far, so much gold in this interview. Thank you so much. I've got about 2 more questions that I'm really curious to hear an answer about. So if we go back to brand experience and product experience with your customers, what are the biggest mistakes that companies trying to implement this usually make?
Sure. I've made a lot of mistakes myself, so I can't speak for everyone else in terms of the biggest mistakes they made. I think that the most critical thing is you've got to keep it's a customer-centric approach. So you've always got to be thinking customer first and putting them at the forefront of your decisions. Yes, there are financial elements to it, there are all the other things, but making sure that you're always thinking and empathizing with what the customer wants and needs is critical in that. And so I think that's the most important thing in terms of getting a very good sense of why you're doing it, in terms of, yes, there might be a financial hit, but you're doing it because you believe that you have a better relationship and there's a long term. So really getting clarity on why you're looking to do it. Don't just roll out a fancy box if it's going to cost you more and no one's going to care about it. That's not putting the customer first. For us, we didn't do it purely for customer reasons. We did it because we thought that would help increase retention too, and it would help serve their needs as a customer of being able to build a daily habit, around our product. So everything we did was, from feedback that their fingers get, green when they try to use the scoop in the bag. Well, we better give them a nice scoop to use with it because they were complaining about that. So keeping the customer first is one. And I think second is creating a team and culture that really does put the customer first and are looking for these issues and are thinking about, complaints that customers have and looking to add more value to. Because without that, you can't be, as the founder or the CEO, seeing everything that goes on with customers at all point in times. You need to be connected to it. But really, you need the team and processes helping you to listen to that feedback, being empathetic to it, and then changing strategy or plans accordingly. So
absolutely,
they're 2 big things.
Awesome. Now, final question. If you would go back to being a 7-figure e-commerce company trying to reach that, 8-figure mark, what would you do differently?
It's a good question. So for businesses, I'm going to have to think about this. I think the most important thing is staying true to the vision of the company and the founding vision of it, in terms of why are we in business and what is the problem we are solving, and making sure that you never deviate from that. So knowing at the core, why are you doing this? Sort of, what problem are we solving for customers? And ensuring that we're always building a brand that is aligned with it. That's what I do, because if you keep doing that and you keep finding more people and adding value to the world, hey presto, you can generally capture it, some back as well. So
amazing.
That'd be it.
That's fantastic advice. Adam, thank you so much for being on the podcast. That was just fantastic. So many gold nuggets. Now, if people want to connect with you or Athletic Greens, they want to learn more about the brand or what you're doing, where should they go?
Sure. Just jump on a LinkedIn and add me there. That's generally best. Adam Trouncer. I'm the only one, unfortunately, so everyone can find me anyway. So just shoot me a message there, and more than happy to connect. So.
Awesome. Adam, thank you so much. I can't wait to get this episode live. That was great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, that's it for today's episode. To make sure you don't miss any of the new episodes, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And if you've liked what you've heard, make sure to leave a review in the iTunes store. That would truly mean the world to me. Now, if you're working on an e-commerce store that does over $1 million in online sales and increasing conversions is currently a priority, make sure to go to splitbase.com/assessment. That's splitbase.com/assessment to get a free analysis of your website and find out what's the #1 action item our conversion experts recommend that you do next to boost conversions. If you have any guest requests, questions, or comments, tweet me at @Paulin-Daigle, and I'll be super happy to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. This is Minds of E-commerce.